we live in times where there are now countless AI generated videos. The problem is no longer can you make a video. The problem is can you make a video that someone can care enough to watch? We live in times where there are lots of people who are actually creating content, especially AI generated videos. AI has completely changed storytelling. A few years ago, creating a cinematic video required cameras, actors, locations, editors, and an entire production team. Today, you can sit in your room, give an AI a prompt, and create something that looks like it came from, a movie. But here's the problem. Everybody can do it now. And when everybody can create beautiful videos stops being the advantage because your audience does not care how difficult it was for you to actually generate the video or to create the video. They only care about one thing. Is this video worth watching? And that is why I want to focus on something much more important than the AI tools that you are using. The story. It's important that you are not just obsessed about what tools am I making use of, because the tools that are available to you are the same tools that are available to many other AI content creators like yourself. So what would be your advantage? Your advantage in this case would be your story, because you can have the most beautiful AI generated video in the world, but if the story is boring, people will leave. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to write stories, especially folk tales and drama style, stories that makes people want to find out what happens next in your story. So your opening, that's the opening of your video, should actually be interesting and not be a boring one. Okay, so we have two examples here. The boring one, which is once upon a time, there lived a poor farmer named Chike in a small African village. Now that looks good, and well, you could tell that to little children who are in nursery school and they may be excited with that. But people who are a lot older, who have access to devices, of course, they are not interested or intrigued by that. Okay, a better one would be something like this. The night Chike buried his wife was the same night he heard her knocking on his door. Now this is beautiful because, come on, this is something I want to pay attention to, not something that looks like what came out from a nursery school poem. Now those two are completely different openings. The first is a completely boring one. The second is an interesting one. Okay, so if I had to tell you to choose between one of those two, of course you'll go with the latter. All right, so as much as possible, you do not want your opening to be a boring one. You want it to be an interesting one. One of the biggest mistakes people make when writing AI stories is that they think they need to introduce everything first. They introduce the village, they introduce the characters, the family, the history, and by the time the actual story begins, the viewer is already uninterested. You don't have to tell me everything before the story begins. Give me a reason to care about the story so that I can keep on watching. All right, so take a look at some of these examples. Here are some examples, right? So you can make use of the mystery style, you can make use of the danger style, the impossible situation style, or the promise of a revelation. Now, when we talk about the mystery styled introduction, something like this. Every night at exactly 2 a.m., someone knocked on Amara's door. The problem was Amara lived alone. Now, that's something that wants to get people attention. People want to, okay, someone knocked at Amara's door. Who is this person? And the fact that Amara lives alone makes it something I want to be interested in. It brings that level of curiosity in the audience's mind. All right. Now, the second formula in actually introducing your story is the danger style. Something like this: the king had one rule: never enter the forests after sunset. Now, pay attention to that. See how intriguing that sounds. Okay, the king had one rule: never enter the forest after sunset. That night, his son broke it. His own son broke it. Now, if you are able to match this up, the introduction, with a good voice, and then, of course, your visuals as well, you can, of course, keep the attention of the people that watch your videos. All right, so not just about creating wonderful videos, you want to make sure that the introduction to your video is actually powerful. All right, so we have talked about the mystery, we have talked about the danger, um, hook structure. Now we have the impossible situation structure. The villagers watched a dead man walk into the market. What comes into your mind when you hear that? That someone who is dead is walking, and not just walking, he's walking into the market. And what that brings to your mind is, a market is a place of where many people make transactions. They are trading, they are buying, they are selling. And what could be the next thing that happens after now? Because if a dead man was walking in a lonely city, it sounds good, but of course he's not going to interact with anyone, so they may not exactly care. But when he's walking in the market, that creates a sense of tension. All right, so impossible situation. Okay, so another hook structure would be the promise of a revelation. Something like this: for 20 years, Chidi believed his father died in the war. Then a letter arrived from him. A letter arrived from his father. Now, I know you understand where this is going to. For such a long time, this guy never believed that he had a father. He had always believed that he lost his father in a war. And somehow, his father sent him a letter. So there are a lot of possible scenarios that can actually come out from this, but it keeps the audience thinking, what could it be? All right, so your introduction should actually be something that keeps the audience's attention and wants them to actually keep up with your video. So it's important to also make the audience ask questions. You see, curiosity is one of the engines of retention. Your ability to keep people watching your videos will be based on your ability to keep them curious enough and long enough to actually watch your videos. You see, once you have gotten your introduction, your hook, it's also important that you learn how to create questions, because when someone asks a question in their mind, they have a reason to keep on watching your video. If I tell you everything, then there is nothing left for you to discover. Okay, so here's an example. If I say a woman moved into a village with her 3 children, there's nothing particularly interesting about that statement. But when I change it to something like this: a woman moved into the village with 3 children, every villager recognized the children, but nobody had ever seen their mother before. Now, the question that comes into the minds of these people are: who are the children? Why does everyone know them? Why don't they know their mother? And who is this mother? Because it now brings a lot of curiosity. They are now asking questions. If the villagers know the children, how is it that they don't know the mother? Has the mother been hiding? A lot of questions just begin to pop up. It's important that you are able to create these questions subtly in the minds of the people who actually watch your videos. But make sure that while you are creating these questions, you are answering them. But for every question you answer, you also create another question that keeps them wanting to watch the videos long and long enough. All right. So the next on my list will be: don't just make things happen, make things cause other things. I don't know if you get that point. Now, here's the thing. Stories become boring when events are disconnected. One of the mistakes I see in AI generated stories is that things simply happen. He goes to the forest, he sees a house, he enters into the house, he meets a woman, then something else, happens along the way, something else happens again. That's not necessarily a story. That's a sequence of events. A good story will be a chain of consequences. All right, you can make use of something like this. This is a very practical example. um you can say something like, Chike entered the forest, but he realized someone was following him. Therefore, he ran into an abandoned house, but the house was not abandoned. Now you see all those things coming, together. Now there's a way the mind actually works. The mind doesn't like boring stuffs, and so you want to be not just a storyteller, you want to be a psychologist as well, ensuring that you are keeping the minds of the people as engaged as possible. All right, so it says, therefore he ran into the abandoned house, but the house was not abandoned. Now this is another thing again. And so he ran into the bedroom, but someone was already sleeping on the bed. Now this creates, a lot of events all happening together, and it keeps the mind of the person who listens to your story very active. All right, so don't forget, don't just make things happen, make things cause other things to happen. The next point will be giving your character something they want, something they want. One of the things I always tell people who create, videos, stories, is make sure your story has some level of desire. Your character has some kind of desire. Okay, your character needs to want something, and sometimes, very nicely, something obsessively. Okay, it gives that story some level of intensity. It gives your story some level of fire. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Okay, so whether it is money, it could be love, it could be freedom, it could be revenge, maybe they want their family back, it could be respect. All right, it could be survival. You see, every one of the stories that you have watched and you were intrigued by it, you loved it so much, they were one of the stories that had one of these things. The character wanted one of these things because they are emotionally, intriguing. They can flare you up. They can, get to your emotions. Because you see, once you understand what the character wants, you have a reason to care whether they succeed. All right, they find a way to get into your emotions such that you are now interested in this character. Will they find love after all that they have been through? Will they be able to survive where they have now found themselves? Will they be able to get the revenge? Someone killed the father or killed the mother or took, a possession that was dear to them. Will they be able to get their revenge? Now, when you are able to, paint a story that reflects any one of these things, you can be sure that you will get the attention of the people who actually watch your video. Okay, so before you actually write your story, this is a very practical exercise I would like you to, go through. Before you write a story, you want to take note of these things. You can say, my character wants this because of this, but this is preventing them from actually getting it. An example can be, Chike wants enough money to save his mother's farm because the family is about to lose it. But the only person who can help him is a mysterious stranger who demands something in return. Now you can see how that, gives you a sense of, there's something in this story that will want me to pay attention to. Okay, it makes you emotionally invested in that story. So let's go to the next one, using secrets and withheld information. So one of the most powerful things you can do in storytelling is let the audience know that something is being hidden. You don't necessarily have to tell them what the secret is, because I think this is one of the mistakes most people make, is that they just try to make everything known so quickly. But you can keep a secret without actually telling them that you are keeping a secret. You just need to make them feel that there is a secret. All right, so this is just an example, right? Instead of saying Chiki's mother was hiding a terrible secret, you could put it this way. What Whenever Chike mentioned his father's name, his mother left the room. Now the audience begins to think, why is that the case? All right, then maybe later you can write something like this: one night Chike finally asked her why she refused to talk about his father. She looked at him for a long time and then she said, because your father is not the man you think he is, or the man you think he was. Going on from that point. So you don't have to explain everything immediately. Just bring out the stories, or bring out some of the little things that you need to make known gradually and slowly, and then the story unfolds from there. All right, rather than just making everything known altogether. So just make sure that there's some kind of secret. You don't have to tell them outrightly that there's a secret, but you can make them know, or make them know that there is something being hidden in the story, which will actually keep their attention. All right. Okay, so we have come to the very end, and honestly, then there is so much more that I could still talk about, because what I've shared to you in this video is only a small part of what goes into writing an AI story that people actually want to watch. There are still techniques we have not talked about yet: how to make your audience emotionally attached to a character, how to create twists that actually feel satisfying, how to control the pace of a story, how to build tension without constantly forcing something dramatic to happen, and how to write endings, endings of your story that make people sit there for a moment after the video is over. But I'm not going to give you everything in this video, at least not yet, because I want to know if this is something you actually want to learn. If these videos really helped you, if you found yourself looking at your own AI stories differently, and if you want me to take this even deeper, then just let me know. Leave a comment. Tell me what you struggled with most when writing your stories. And if I see that there's enough interest, I'll make part two, where we'll now go deeper into the techniques I have not covered here. Because I don't just want to show you how to generate AI videos, I want to show you how to make someone care about watching it. AI can generate the images, AI can generate the voice, and of course, I've taught you all of that here. AI can help you to write the words, but the story is what makes someone care enough to stay with your video. So before you open your next AI video generator, don't start with the prompt, start with the story. And if you want part two, you already know what to do. I'll see you in the next video, and do take care of yourself.